Hey everybody, welcome to Mirror in the Stall. We are joined today by my lovely friend, Francine Favret, who I just learned how to say her last name. Welcome.
Yeah, great to be here. I'm excited to get into this conversation.
I know it's a weird thing to be excited about, right? But
It really is.
well, I guess we'll start with just introduce yourself and then and tell everybody a little bit about like what it is you do.
I'm a girl from South Louisiana. I worked in corporate environment for over 20 years in leadership roles and coaching before I even knew that I was really coaching, and just love that support role. And I guess about maybe 6 years now, about 5.5 years ago, I stepped out of my corporate career to do coaching solo and to do it in my own terms. And probably in the last 6 years, and more so in the last couple of years, really diving deeper into the spiritual part and not just mindset and like positivity, because I guess this will lead me into the shadow work that we're going to talk about. Because realize like just putting on a happy face and going, I'm just going to change my state. And I'm going to be freaking positive and like everything is just great, but I'm still crying myself to sleep at night, like, and I'm still feeling a freaking void. So what's up with that? And really, I guess a year ago, my shadows, or those things that feel uncomfortable, started popping up like jack in the boxes, like a lot. And so this is my assistant, everyone. My light shadow, Sasash. And she will pop up every now and then. And I couldn't really put I couldn't really navigate like what's going on, everything from the outside was lining up in a good way. So why do I wake up with this feeling of like something, if dark, I guess, or uncomfortable is a word. And so lined up with a mentor of mine that understood this work and that's a master in it. And I think my previous work that I did allowed me to be able to really digest it and navigate it. And so it was just, oh God, lots of beautiful shifts. It's like, doing this work, it's ongoing. I don't know that we're ever there, but it's easier to get through, and it's less intense, or the intensity doesn't last like a month, 3 months, or whatever. You can sort of navigate it in a few hours or a day. So that's sort of it in a nutshell.
Perfect. Yeah. So I feel like the progression in the last year for everybody that is kind of doing the work has been fast forwarded. And when I say work is starting to, instead of blame, I think external circumstances and relationships and situations and people on those things, it's that moment where you realize, actually, I'm the one that probably I need to be looking at. So when I say that, I think it's that doing the work is like recognizing, oh, there's actually something that I need to be focusing on outside of, or not outside of myself, but here and with me. And I agree, like we've done a lot of the same stuff with, like Tony Robbins and all of this stuff. And I do agree with the idea that like in those moments, you have a choice to decide how you're going to feel about something. But what I didn't understand for a long time was the idea of spiritual bypass, where you're not dealing with the stuff. It keeps popping up, like the same relationship keeps popping up. So, but I can change my state and be happy about it and get rid of it and then move on. But like, you never actually went deeper to understand why it was popping up and dealt with it. So it keeps popping up. Maybe you get really good at like blowing it off or bypassing the deep work and feeling good, but it's just so exhausting after a while when you realize, yes, I feel much better about things, and I can, and I can feel better in those moments, but it's like, but I'm now marathoning long term. Like, I'm tired now. I'm tired of making myself feel good about shit that I just wish it would stop. So I
Yeah,
think that's what,
exactly.
yeah, I think that's where the,
Exactly. And we couldn't go to any workshops, right? We
right.
couldn't go
Oh
get
yeah.
used up. We had to like really deal with our stuff. But
Mhm.
like you said, yeah, it's the parts of us that we don't want to look at,
Mhm.
that we kind of see in everybody else. And it's kind of painful, and we ignore it and act like it's really not there, but it is, because we can feel it, and we just sort of put it on the shelf, put it in a box, hide it, bury it somewhere. But it's like emerging to kind of come through. And what I've discovered is it really wants acceptance.
Yeah, definitely.
And we'll go on and just describe one shadow that really hit me. This probably happened, I don't know, about 8 months ago. I was shopping in a mall, and I never go in the mall, but I must have been kind of in a meditative state for it to come through. But it was something heavy, like all week, that just kept probing. And I was doing exactly like we've been taught, kind of like to shift and to like think positive and to change those positive thoughts. But it kept on kind of like a teacher, like, hey, I'm here, pay attention. And I'm like, I don't want to. And then it's like, the teacher's like, but you got to get this lesson. So it comes on stronger. And as I'm like just walking in the mall, and there's not a lot of people there because it's pandemic time, heavy pandemic time, I'm like, okay, I hear you. Okay, I need to pay attention. And so that shadow sort of popped up, and it took me back in my childhood when there was like a lot of unworthiness, and I felt gross and disgusted. This was probably 7 years old. And it was, so as I grew older, created an ego or an illusion self to compensate for that part that I made wrong and I neglected. And so it just came out, and I'm like, what do you want? And I started thanking it, like, thank you for doing that all these years. And it came out, and it was like, it was such an honor to take that pain away. It was such an honor. And right now, I just want you to love me, to accept it, and to love me. And it like brought me to tears. And
Right.
so I just, we had a conversation, and just loved it for what it is, and journaled about it whenever I got home. And then after that, the intensity faded.
Mhm.
It's sort of like, so whatever, and it came up in relationships. So it was just getting kind of upset about maybe a comment my husband said, which was really innocent on his end, but my filter took it differently. Like that little girl that was wounded popped up and started creating a horror story. But you and I know, like, it's a story, but we can shift that story. But it was still coming on really strong. So I knew it was something that I needed to face head on.
Right.
And so that trigger sort of like diffused itself after that.
Yeah. So I guess I feel like for people that aren't clear in different ways that a shadow would pop up, if they're not clear on what that is, I feel like for people with horses, if you're a horse person, and I know there's some people that aren't, I feel like anything that's being reflected back to you that maybe you don't feel great about. Like, my horse makes me feel XYZ. My partner makes me feel XYZ. That person, this, and looking for those patterns that you feel triggered around. What is the emotion that's being trudged up in multiple different ways? How do you kind of look at it? Like, what is a shadow? How would we identify what a shadow is?
Yeah, for me, it's okay, that's a really good question. So this past weekend, I did a workshop in narcissistic. That topic came up, which was great, and there was a few people that were like, well, I thought maybe I was at one time. And I'm like, if you read it, like we probably all have an out, right? We
Mhm.
all. And so we really looked at that. And it's that part where we can see the narcissistic in everybody else. And I'm just using that as an example,
Mhm.
right? But there's like a part of us that goes, well, that's not me. It could never be me. That's like, ugh. And if it's me, then like, oh, but what if there is a part of that? You know, it's going to meet that. So why is that narcissistic personality really bothering me? Or a different, I'm using narcissistic, but maybe a different trait in someone. Why is that like irritating the crap out of me?
Mhm.
It doesn't mean that we have it on full on, like on the spectrum, but maybe there's like a speck of something. Maybe there's vanity in me that I developed because I had to,
Mhm.
because my, not because I had to, because my, the ego part or the split that was this damaged child came in to save the day. And it said, well, for you to get through life, we need to be something different.
Mhm.
So there's mirrors and there's hints all around, but it seems like so intense and so ugly, like, and the more that we make that wrong, you know, the more it pops up, right? Until we get it or we feel it. And then, so if you're brave enough to go deep in the ocean to grab that treasure and look at it, no matter what it looks like, and just accept it and go, well, maybe I did have that, but
Mhm.
this is probably why, and love it.
Right.
So I don't
Mhm.
know if that answered.
Yeah.
Love it.
It
Okay.
it feels like it really goes into the judgment about, it's almost like the reflection of the things that you judge about other people is usually
Mhm.
because there's a piece of you within that you see, whether it's unconscious or conscious, that needs to be looked at, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so then the second part would be, so if, why would somebody want to do shadow work? I guess we kind of got to that a tiny bit in the beginning, but why would someone say, okay, this sounds really uncomfortable? Like, why would I want to?
It is no joke. Not everybody wants to do this because the treasure piece, the ultimate find once you do the work, is going to give you peace. And for me,
Mm,
peace is like more valuable than happiness, like because it leads you to happiness. It leads you to bliss, happiness, and all of that we're all freaking chasing after is not outside of us, it's inside. So I guess that would be just my simple answer. It leads you to peace.
mm,
So
yeah.
if you're like wanting to feel peace, that there's many different tools, but that's a tool that I found that really works. And
Mhm.
that is a kind of, not kind of, it is healing. There's healing in it. So another reason. Not to say that you will work on this and you'll never get triggered. Stress seems to like bring stuff out, even though we've done all the work, or whenever the universe feels like we want to get it, it wants us to get it on a deeper level, like pull the onion peel back even more. There's another layer to go. Like, I thought I did all this. Nope. Um, and the intensity of the trigger you'll have, it won't last as long. That's been my experience.
Yeah.
And you won't
Yeah.
have
That
to find other things to numb.
right. Yeah. I feel like it's interesting because shadow work is never anything that crossed my mind. And then this last 6 months have been really intense. Um, and I had a session with Karina, who actually before that I had a session with my cranial sacral lady, who had just in conversation said, oh, well, I'm doing shadow work this week with my group of women that, we get together, whatever, and we're doing that this week. And she just said the word, and we never talked about it beyond that. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what that is. And then I had session with Karina, who's a medium / does cards, and she's super intuitive. And she also said something about shadow work. So I was like, well, I guess this is apparently something I'm supposed to be paying attention to. So once New Year's Eve hit and it was January, and I was like, I don't know how to do shadow work. I was like, but what I'm going to do is know that for me, it was just like, okay, where are these big, strong emotions? Where do they come up? And where do I want to say, I shouldn't feel that way, or I thought I'd already done that. And then instead of doing that, I wrote them down and was like, this is what I'm feeling right now. And then, and I did that, and I put myself almost intentionally in scenarios where I would have avoided before, but I was like, I'm going to dive into this and see what it can trudge up for me and use it as like a tool to like help bring all this stuff intentionally to the surface. And I know what I did, and I don't know what it looks like or doesn't look like, or how many different ways you can do it. But I would love to hear for everyone on this call, how you get through it, or how you do it, or what your framework for it looks like.
A few different ways. One, journaling is such a great practice. It allows us to get it all out. So that way, and just allowing the divine or whatever just to come through. And then just really sitting with myself with the emotion and letting the shadow work sort of pop up and talk to me. I know that sounds weird, but just reveal itself, and you can get through this maybe through meditation, but just really getting quiet and just saying, okay, I see you. Mm-hmm. And then, observing it and having a conversation with it, and sort of like looking at it as a little kid or whatever, and pretending like I'm grabbing its hands and just, I accept you and I love you and thank you. So those are the two ways that I've done it. Journaling, which, you said you do it that way, which is great. And then sort of just kind of getting in a stillness, meditation, and just kind of the spiritual part of just letting it come through.
Yeah. So like speaking to like the judgment part, it feels like that is like a big piece of it, right? The judgment of, for me, it was like, I'm judging the stuff that I'm dealing with right now because I thought I already did this work, and I don't understand why it would continue to come up because I already did this. So there was like this
wrong. Yeah.
I'm not doing it right. I don't know why this is happening again. I don't know why I'm in this situation again. Like it feels like what's in it is like judgment, right? It's like judgment of self or judgment. There's like something about judgment that's got it's like in it.
Such a good question. And it keeps you, I definitely went through that because I'm like, something must be wrong with me. Like I need to go like see somebody else. And like, what is up with that? Because I've done everything, and like you have to be patient with yourself. Mm-hmm. The shadow may take months. Mm-hmm. It may be just like, and there may be bits and pieces of it. So it's loving yourself through it. You're going to get through it, but it's, judgment. I definitely know where you're coming from on that one. I went through it myself. And so then that's another thing you have to get through. So if you do judge, just acknowledge that you did judge, and don't judge the judge.
Don't judge. Don't get judgy.
Don't judge the judge, and be okay with judging, because it's, it's human. Right. But allow yourself, just give yourself grace, and know that, it takes time.
Right.
And just love yourself through those moments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So something that kept coming up that I kept giving my clients to do, and I don't know if this qualifies as shadow work, but maybe it does. I don't know. So I'll throw this out and see what you think. It felt like when I got triggered, like there was a reoccurring thing that would come up for me. And it was around resentment. And I always go back to those 4 R's, the resentment, rejection, the 4 R's I can never remember. Resentment, rejection, regret, and the need for revenge. I feel like those four things kind of encompass like the biggest parts. If you have any of that, you're going to be clogged up. And so mine was resentment. So I couldn't figure out why in the world this kept coming up, like, and why, because I looked at it like from like an objective place and went, I shouldn't feel that way about this. Like, this doesn't make any sense, but I kept feeling it like in my body. And so what I ended up doing was writing out, like identifying the first time that I like felt that way. Like, when's the first time that I felt this? As far back as I can actually remember. And I actually journaled it. I wrote the story of, this is the first time, this is what it looked like, this is who was there, you know, and this is how this thing was handled and why I probably feel resentful. And then I sat in that and I felt where all of that accumulated in my body. And then I went, okay, if this situation were to be presented to me and I'm a writer and I looked at it like it wasn't my story, and if I was going to rewrite this in a way that allowed this little girl to experience things differently and not carry this resentment through, how would people around have responded? How would it have looked? How would the situation be different? And then I wrote it out, like, you know, this person would have responded this way instead of that way or whatever. And in a way where I felt held and seen and heard and safe. And then I sat in that, and then I put myself back in the story and I experienced it that way. And then I kind of felt what it felt like in my body to have it, had it go the other way. And it felt like there was something about that that dissolved it a little bit. And then I could kind of see it not as my story, but it was a story that was being written. And I went, that's probably why that adult acted that way, because they were doing the best. So it allowed me to have a little bit of empathy, but not be so attached into the story that I was re-experiencing it and being resentful. But then got to re-experience it in a different way from a conscious place. It allowed some level of like empathy or something, maybe. I don't know if like that makes any sense. But
yeah, I definitely think that could be connected. I love how you went and you rewrote it. I think maybe that's sort of recall healing whenever you recall it. I love how you navigated and you went to the origin. There are times when I don't know when the origin is. I know that, like, for me, the R is like respect, or it might be disrespect. That one comes up a lot. And I don't know where, like, nothing comes up, but I might, whenever I deal with that one, because that's one I need to look into, I might ask the universe to just bring me to a moment whenever I felt disrespected. Maybe it's the first time, or maybe it's a time where it was like really intense. But I love how you went back and you rewrote it, because I think what you did there is like, you not only healed you, but it branches off into generations. Like, we're not only doing the work for us, we're doing it, we're all connected, right?
Yeah, definitely. So it feels like too, that piece of how does somebody, and I don't know if you have a good answer for this, because I feel like sometimes, right, people can identify it. Yeah, this person pisses me off and they irritate me so much that I'd rather just never see him again or never talk to them again, you know. But it's like family member, like that comes up a lot, right? I have this family member that just like drives me crazy. And you're being triggered by that family member. So looking at that and saying, is there something about them that I have that I need to look at deeper? And how would that look? Like, what would you tell somebody that's like, yep, I have this family member, what should I do about it?
Love him from a distance. No, that might be spiritual bypass, but you could do that. It depends. So you have this family member and they irritate you and you don't want to be around them. I have family members like that. I totally get it. But what will happen is, one, that family member will pop up in a different personality. And so the more that you get rid of that similar personality, it's going to continue to pop up. So maybe it's something that you have in you, or it could be a character that was in maybe your earlier life that was maybe you had a traumatic experience with them.
Mhm.
And so maybe it's a clue for healing in that area to go back and look at, to clean up. So that's been my experience, that it may not necessarily be something in me like a mirror, or it could be they represent something that was traumatic once.
Right. So it's interesting because I just talked to somebody, I think yesterday or the day before, and she kind of was introducing herself, and she was like, she said something about narcissism. And it was interesting because she's like, that's not normally in my introduction. I don't know why I said that. But clearly because somebody here needed, and I think that everybody has like that type of person around. Like you said, I feel like everybody, it's interesting that you said it in the beginning of this too, and that it came up for you in your workshop. And I think it is something that everyone has in them, right? That's like a shadow thing that if you let it
Right.
go too far, you become that. But everyone has those traits, and it's about balancing it out and recognizing it and going, wait a minute. So for those people that like, because I know I have a couple clients who are like, well, I have this person and that is what they are. And I have that in my life. And I know that I actually am to the point now where I'm not triggered by it. And I'm trying to, for them, identify how that happened. Like, how did that happen? How did I, because in a relationship that I had, and and it was the marriage, and that's kind of the process. I was so upset. I was always trying to prove myself and no, like this isn't who I am, and who you're saying is not who I am. And it was just this constant battle of trying to prove your worthiness to whoever that wasn't there to hear if you're worthy or not, because that's not their jam. But I'm, if within that, because that shows up for so many people right now, if it's, are you trying to prove your worthiness to yourself? Like, is that what that kind of brings back? Or is it, well, like, why do these people pop up? Why? Do you know why?
You were like, they're actually a teacher. Yeah, I think it's like, if this mother effer who has no soul, that has like stripped me of my soul, if I can get them to see me as love, then I am that, and I'm accepted, because they're so hard to like please and all of that. Then, so we put all of our worth in that, because it's so painful for what the stuff that they're projecting.
Right.
It usually happens in exes. And I think that's why a lot of people will, that have a narcissistic, or however a toxic, they'll keep that cord, because it's like, oh, if they accept me, then everything is okay. Then I'll be okay. Then I will be whole. If this one that doesn't see anything, and plus it's so darn painful, the stuff that they throw at us. And then we go and we try to make up, and like, it's all okay, because we want them to love us, because then if they love us, then we'll be enough.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah. So really doing that work, where I stopped judging, I think those parts of me that were being kind of highlighted, where I think it was like all of a sudden it was the need to not prove myself to anybody. I clearly had a situation this morning that I was like, what's interesting, we're talking about shadow work today, and I had a giant shadow show up on my doorstep. And what I experienced was this conversation of, well, we need to have this one last conversation so that everything ends good. So you see me for who I am, and I see you for who you are. And for me, it was like, I don't need that. I don't care how you see me. And I don't know, like, not in a non-loving way, because the appreciation of the experience that we've had together is there, and the growth that I've had. But it was a very interesting, different thing. And I think that's what you get when you start diving into this stuff, right? It's that I don't need you to love and accept me, and I don't need you to see me in any way, because that's all through your lens anyways. I know who I am, and I know that how I've responded to stuff is exactly true to who I am. And that's literally all that matters. And it was like, I think that's your like narcissist repellent. Not,
Yes.
not
And
giving
we
a
really, exactly. The only reason why we attract them is because we don't have healthy boundaries.
right.
And the healthy boundaries comes from, acceptance of self-love and all of that. So it becomes really natural, like what you did this morning. Like it was nothing that was forced. It was just sort of natural. You weren't going, I know I have to do this in my head, tells me to do this, so I'm going to do it. And you go through like the robotic stuff, but you're not really deeply feeling it. You felt it.
Right.
And so the universe was like, let's test this out.
I
like
keep
right before the
every time I'm going to teach something, and I was like, it's because we're
yes.
teaching. And like, I never in my life expected to that package to end up on the front steps this morning, but I was like, you gotta be joking me right now. I was like, okay, game on. Like, I can do this. Like, this is no problem. Like,
Mhm.
it was really, it was a way to just see myself differently in the scenario that I've always responded the same in these situations. I've had these situations multiple times in my life. And it was just very easy for me to honor like my place. And it was, I really genuinely do not care how you see me. I don't have to prove myself to you. And I think what people are looking for is that peace, right? That piece of, oh, yeah, like, okay, bye. And that's what it is. That's doing that work of kind of reclaiming the parts of you that that you lost growing up with different situations, whether they're major traumas or little things that you remember. Doing the work of filing back through it and looking at it and going, I have to appreciate the situation because I'm here now because of it. That's, I think, for people that have been through big trauma, how that can't get there, that are like, I don't even know. I have one client who had a scenario when she was younger, and she's like, I don't even know how to get to a place to see anything good from it. Like, do you have to get there, or like, how do you work your way around it when it feels too big? Because I'm sure that'll come up for people.
Good question. I think that when God, the universe, knows that you're ready, I really believe this, it'll be handed to you and with tools that fit you to navigate it. So, and it's maybe if for something really traumatic, it's smaller. It's just a tender layer, just looking at it and being really gentle and not like full on.
Right.
You don't have to be a Jedi master with it could be like, let's look at it. Just sit with it.
Yeah, because I guess if it is a really big thing, that's the first thing people want to do is forget about it. I don't even want to remember that happened.
Right.
But it's still something in your body. An experience I had with my cranial person was that I was like, I feel it. I don't remember the memory of this, but it gets triggered and I feel it so strongly, right?
Yeah.
It's that unconscious body remembering. And so the experience of just feel it, then you don't have to remember, just feel it for 30 seconds and then let's dip out of it, right? It's like, yeah, so that's about being ready and knowing that those tools will show up for you when you're ready for the next layer to come off, instead of going, why haven't I figured this out yet?
Yeah, it's just really being gentle, because we get really impatient and then we think something's wrong with us because we haven't. It's all about timing too.
So for like practices that people could do, like, what are your favorite things that you do that get you into the place where, you know, you can do this work? Like, do you meditate? Do you know, what does it look like for you?
I carve out because so this is probably long for most people, maybe not, depending on what you do in your circumstance. I have at least an hour a day that I spend with God, the universe, what I call my spiritual side, and it's for me to get grounded. And to put that armor, I guess, armor meaning like all of the tools. So a lot of it is journaling every morning almost. Sometimes it's going in nature and walking barefooted, but really it's just reading whatever spiritual material that resonates with me, allowing God to come through. I journal like that, and just quiet meditation. So it's usually an hour. Sometimes it's 2 hours.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I have so many people that I'm like, can you just find 5 minutes to start? Just 5. Like, this is your entire life experience on this planet. Surely you can start off by finding 5 minutes. But it is interesting how people think they don't have time for that when it's really what's shaping your entire experience here. And for me, this last 6 months or whatever, I was teaching that, right? I was doing mirror sessions. I'm having people journal and like all of this stuff, but I wasn't actually doing that stuff. I knew that it's good, and I think that's why the end of the year got so big for me, because it was like, okay, so when I had 2 different coaches say, well, what are you doing for yourself? And I always thought it meant like, how are you having fun? Like, are you going to the beach? Like, are you just working all the time? Are you going on vacations, or what are you doing for yourself? But I realized at the beginning of January that, oh, what am I doing for myself? Like, am I doing the work that I'm telling everyone else to do? And I was partially doing it. And then I realized that really equated to that self-love piece. Like, I'm worthy enough to do the work. And like, I didn't even connect the two.
That's so good, Amber. So good. Yeah, I've been there.
So much about my experience. Yeah. So I think people understanding that, like, yeah, like we're coaches, like, and then you're still a human being. So it takes these big, like, smacks from from the universe or God or whatever resonates with you to say, hey, hello, like, why is all this showing up? Oh, because you're not actually doing it for yourself. And so the moment I started doing it, it all started to kind of like peel off, and the heaviness lifted, because I feel like people sometimes don't even know what it is like to be without that heaviness. And it's amazing. And it's
yeah. Good point. Yeah. Because you live with it for so long. And then once it falls off, you can really see the contrast. But yeah, I was half-assing it too. I'm like preaching it, like, but I think I'm good. Like, I'm good. I don't need to do this heavy stuff, but you need to do it. I just need to do it a little bit, like, and then the universe is like, slap, slap. But yeah. And so, and you can really get creative, like anything that puts you in a meditative state where you can connect to yourself. If you like get into like laundry or folding clothes or cleaning the house, that can get you kind of outside of your beta active left brain, where you just sort of like, even painting, whatever. So you can incorporate some of your chores if you say, oh, I don't have time to just do things that are not going to involve like doing math or, problem solving, where you can just sort of relax. So I'll do that sometimes.
That's an interesting thing to even put out, is like, I'm going to do laundry, I'm going to do the dishes. A lot of people here, horse people, I'm going to scoop poop. But set the intention beforehand, maybe, to say, I'm ready to hear whatever I need to hear, see whatever I need to see, and understand whatever I need to understand, and then go do your chores. And then kind of just stay present as you're folding the clothes or washing the dishes.
Yes. Yes.
I feel like that's actually something I may incorporate into some things to tell people to do. I think it's setting the intention beforehand to say, I want clarity on this stuff, and then go do the stuff that.
Exactly. Because you go, oh, shit, an hour, man, I don't have an hour. But if you don't, you can get really creative. There's sometimes where it's not always good to sit down for an hour, right? Like getting up and just, I feel like I'm accomplishing something. I'm satisfying that, oh, you have to be doing shit. With, I am doing stuff, just allowing God, the universe, love to just come through, the teacher to come through. And I'm really present to just open that crown.
Yeah, I think that for people, that makes it a whole different thing, right? Because everyone has like monotonous chores that you don't actually have to think about while you're doing them. So set the intention beforehand to to get some of that coming through while you're doing that stuff. Maybe have your journal off to the side in case something brilliant comes and you just like jot it down.
Yeah, exactly. And if the mornings don't work, do it at night.
Yeah, I feel like that's an important thing for people to tap into too, is like your natural flow of like when you're creative and when you feel like you can be good with doing stuff like that. I think sometimes people, they try to force, like, I'm going to do it in the morning because this is where I have time. But if you're in a place where you're worried about doing other things in the morning, then that's not. So it's finding that time that feels good in your body. Like when you sit and go, when would be the best time for me to carve out this space? And find what actually works for you and make it like that high priority to like work it in then instead of trying to force it. I feel like might even be a thing that would be really helpful for people to like make this easy. Like this isn't supposed to be this horrible chore where you're like, oh, I have to like journal. It's like thinking about end goal is what you're going to feel like on the other side and make it so it works for you. Work it into your schedule where it works for you.
Right. Exactly. Even if it's getting up an hour earlier.
How much of, so we've already blabbed for 50 minutes. This is so good. Me and Francine can literally talk for hours, so I need to pay attention. But how much, this is something that's come up for me a lot, and I don't know if I've talked to you about this, so this would be interesting, is how much of the somatic stuff, like the feeling into your body, the sensations in your body, whether it's like pain or, just discomfort, or is that something that you focus on at all or have in the forefront of your mind in any way in any of your practices?
I probably don't dive as deep as you do. I will get it if I feel it in my nervous system right here where it feels like anxiety or anxiousness. I'll pay attention to it and ask the teacher to come through. As far as like in my back or like my hips and other places, I'm just like, oh, that's just my body and ache. So I don't do that practice. I only where I feel like it's a trigger because it feels really anxious. I'll pay attention and zone in.
Yeah. I feel like that's a big thing is you're like reminding people that your bodies give you those messages, right? Like, and they're not to be blown off. It's not to be like, oh, I feel gross right now. Let me get on social media and distract myself from how gross I feel. But that conscious awareness of, oh, this is a message trying to come in. It's like a notification on your phone, like ding, like, hello, there's something that needs to be looked at. It's so easy for us to look at our phone really fast, but instead of looking at our body and going, oh, notification is coming through. What do I need to know more about this situation? I think that's really like another thing that I feel like I haven't pointed out to people in that way, but that could be a very big indicator in that moment of just sitting for, even if it's like 30 seconds and just saying, I see you, I hear you, something's off, right? Like it's that.
Yeah. And it's trapped energy.
Just like, what is trapped energy to you? Like, what is that?
Oh, I love this subject. I'm so glad that we're going there.
Like,
okay.
I get like energy and then.
I'm not the Ninja Turtle on this, but for me, it is something I have like an emotion that I've made wrong. Right. And we actually did this in the workshop this weekend where there was like this one girl that, had issue. Her ex-husband was very, very verbal, abusive, cheated, blah, blah. And she because she grew up a nice Christian girl, she was told that she had to just, keep it all. So someone volunteered to come in the class and we all allowed her to just go off. Like that was the ex-husband and it was like a release and her body was like, so I think it's, emotions that we suppressed.
That's good. Because that's always something I'm like, well, But yeah, the things that you've made wrong, the way that you should have been able to feel and didn't allow it, maybe. I started diving into that book and it was really heavy, the Peter Levine, the somatic experiencing. And that is kind of the same idea, right? It's like this, your stress cycle was triggered and it wasn't allowed to be complete. Like you either were restrained physically or, you know, you couldn't express what you needed to express, or you couldn't fight like you felt like you needed to fight. You couldn't run away. You had to stay in that free state. And that is what got trapped in your body. So your body will stay there until you actually, like the woman you expressed, got to say everything she needed to say. Or if someone needed to run away, they physically can run now when they're in that place, and it actually completes that trauma cycle and allows it to be released.
I did a call with a girl a few days ago where she was attacked when she was like a young teen at a beach, not like rape or anything like that, but guys like touching her in inappropriate ways, her and her friend. And I said, so what did you do? She said, I froze. And I'm like, well, that's probably what you needed to do. So don't judge yourself, you know, for that. But what would you like to do if we were to go back in that story? And she goes, I want to fight. And I'm like, all right, girl, let's go do it. So we went back in that scene and she was like this goddess with this, you know, what do you look like? And she's like, I want to be this goddess. And so she describes what she had on and her armor. And so she got her armor and she sort of like did something with the water and the waves just pushed them away. And so she got to go relive it with not freezing, but like getting that out.
Right. Yeah, that's so good. And to be able to take her through that process again, right? Like, what did it look like, and describe what you were wearing? That's so good. I'm totally going to steal that from you.
Totally do.
But it is that, right? It's like the people don't realize the power that your mind actually has to finish those loops and clear that stuff. And even on the call I talked about yesterday, I was like, it seems there's simple things that you can do with that movement in your body that clears that stuff, but we are so disassociated from our bodies that we don't even know to listen to what they need. Like talking about little kids that run and scream, and the moment they feel like they need to flail around and they just move however they need to move until, you know, they get told you're not supposed to move that way. You need to sit down, you need to be still, you need to listen. And we slowly get that stuff stripped from us, those natural inspirations to move, which is what is releasing all of this stuff. And so when we're adults and we go, oh, we have all this stuff trapped, how it feels so heavy and it feels so big, and it was such a big deal in my life, and was so traumatic. How will I ever get over this? And it's like, first of all, it's like the awareness and then the desire to, but then the simple advice of listening to your body and moving it. Like I've had people release some big stuff just by little body movements. And I was like, could that be a thing? How was that possible? And I talked to, you know, who I spoke with a couple days ago, and she was like, absolutely. But it's people's ego want to hold on to it tighter and not make it that easy. It has to be harder. It has to be more difficult because it's such a hard situation. How could it be that simple? You know what I mean? And really saying for her, like just going back and going, this is what, you know, rewrite that story. What did it look like? But actually taking your brain through that and doing what you would do is so good. And describing it, our brains are so powerful in that way. I love that. But that it is that, I guess it's not simple if you don't know, right? But it is. It's that.
It really is. And so, yeah, like you said, the ego wants to go, it has to be this big old thing. And like when it could be so simple.
Yeah. So good.
I don't think the universe made the healing process difficult.
Right.
Like the pain seems difficult, but like to navigate, it's really just loving, like tender, like experiences. It's not a huge like algebra like problem.
Right.
It's really easy.
Yeah.
The hard part is like facing it.
Right. Yeah. And I think people knowing there is a simple way to do this. You just have to set that intention. Like, this is important to me. I really want to thrive in my life, and this is how I'm going to make it happen. Knowing
Yes.
that, right? And hearing other people say, yeah, I've cleared a lot of stuff by the simple practice, but it's the dedication to it. It's that like discipline of, I'm going to do this every day because I know that there is something better on the other side of it, and just diving in.
Yes.
That's almost the hardest part sometimes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Totally. Totally.
I got when we were at Date with Destiny, I got someone was handing out those intention little necklaces. They have different words on them. And I got a few from random people. And the last one that I got was discipline. And I was like, well, that was interesting. I was like, discipline. And my head went directly to like working out. Like like I couldn't associate it with anything else other than, yeah, I'm gonna get fit. You have to be disciplined. And then I was like, I don't know, like my mind didn't want to think discipline had anything to do with anything else.
Oh yeah. So for me, like all the clues were like in front of me for so long, and I was like, whew, yeah, I got it on kind of a surface level. But like this year, more so than ever, I'm getting it. But once you start getting it, it's easier to see.
Yeah. So we have one question in the chat box. It says, what are good practices to do for self-love? Do you have anything that comes?
Yeah. So for me, definitely carving out some time for me. So self-love, I used to think, oh, I'm going to go to the nail salon. I'll go to like a workshop. Um, Eating healthier, like I cut out a lot of sugar, so that having a spiritual practice, going out in nature whenever you can. Let's see, cutting out like anything that's toxic that comes from the media, whether it's be social media, TV, um, anything that sort of causes chaos. But really just giving yourself that time.
Yeah, it's almost like it goes back to, I think the word discipline is such a like a word, like it seems like hard.
What
And like,
could we change that word? What other word? Because I get the whole discipline thing.
right?
What's another word for discipline that would work?
Something that feels better than that. Commitment, maybe.
Commitment. Yes, I like
Feels-
that. Commitment. I
but it's
commit
Hmm.
instead of like discipline.
Yeah. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe that's probably my own thing. I'm like, discipline. No, nobody tells me what to do. But that
Exactly.
commitment to, I'm going to, the self-love piece is making those decisions and committing to saying, I am not going to treat myself or allow myself to be treated any way that I wouldn't allow someone that I really fully love. Like what would you say to somebody that you really love that was asking you what to do in that scenario? You know what I mean? Whether it's your boundaries not being held up or whatever it looks like. It's sometimes people skip that part. They love everyone else. Is an interesting thing that had come to me when I was talking to somebody about they were talking about the fact that they're always the giver in the relationship. They're always giving so much. And I was like, I kind of feel like that resonates with me a little bit too. I'm like, but what is that? And we kind of unwound it. And it was like, I feel like I was giving so much to overcompensate so I wouldn't receive almost, which seems ridiculous, but it was a worthiness to receive almost that I was dealing with. And so if I keep giving, they don't even have a chance to give back to me. And it went back to that self-love, right? It was like, no, I can be taken care of. I can be loved. And it was an interesting thing that kind of spiraled back around of that. If I'm doing that for someone else, I should be equally as comfortable doing it for myself. And I wasn't. I was more than happy to give to everyone else. And then when it came time for me to receive, I was like, no, that's okay. That's okay. No, it's fine. Like, I don't know. It's totally fine. I don't need that. When it was like, oh, okay, but you do. So
Yeah, totally. It's not comfortable for a lot of us to receive it. It's easier, much easier to give.
Mhm. Yeah, so I think that I'll replace discipline with commitment because that feels better.
Yeah, yeah. Um, So those are some of the things that sort of pop up as self-love, but giving yourself that time. Oh, there's so much conditioning and belief on the whole self-love. You're selfish, there's vanity. Like I grew up with like, my mom, I'm gonna do for everybody else, but not me. And, then you're selfish. So if that's a belief, which it was my belief, and I think a lot of people, take a look at that as well, because that may be interfering with your ability to give yourself for you. Because, and we all know this, like if we don't give ourselves self-love, it's harder to go out and it's like putting the oxygen mask on. Like we have to put it on first so we can take care of others, sort of like that.
Yeah, and you could probably start the shadow work right there. What does it feel like to commit to, I'm going to go do this thing for myself, and telling everybody around you that wants from you, actually, I have a scheduled in thing for myself. If you feel like you shouldn't be doing that, or there's resistance to that, you could probably start your shadow work right there.
Yep. Yes, exactly.
Well, we've talked for an hour. Is there anything else that you feel like came up for you, or that you want to say to feel complete before we end? Yeah, that's so good. And to be able to take her through that process again, right? Like, what did it look like, and describe what you were wearing. That's so good. I'm totally going to steal that from you.
Totally do.
But it is that, right? It's like the people don't realize the power that your mind actually has to finish those loops and clear that stuff. And even on the call I talked about yesterday, I was like, it seems there's simple things that you can do with that movement in your body that clears that stuff, but we are so disassociated from our bodies that we don't even know to listen to what they need. Like talking about little kids that run and scream, and the moment they feel like they need to flail around, and they just move however they need to move until, they get told, you're not supposed to move that way. You need to sit down. You need to be still. You need to listen. And we slowly get that stuff stripped from us, those natural inspirations to move, which is what is releasing all of this stuff. And so when we're adults and we go, oh, we have all this stuff trapped, how it feels so heavy and it feels so big, and it was such a big deal in my life and was so traumatic. How will I ever get over this? And it's like, first of all, it's like the awareness, and then the desire to, but then the simple advice of listening to your body and moving it. Like I've had people release some big stuff just by little body movements. And I was like, could that be a thing? How was that possible? And I talked to, who I spoke with a couple days ago, and she was like, absolutely. But it's people's ego want to hold on to it tighter and not make it that easy. It has to be harder. It has to be more difficult because it was such a hard situation. How could it be that simple? You know what I mean? And really saying, for her, like just going back and going, this is what, rewrite that story. What did it look like? But actually taking your brain through that and doing what you would do is so good. And describing it, our brains are so powerful in that way. I love that. But that it is that, I guess it's not simple if you don't know, right? But it is. It's that.
It really is. And so, yeah, like you said, the ego wants to go, it has to be this big old thing. And like when it could be so simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So good.
I don't think the universe made the healing process difficult.
Right.
Like the pain seems difficult, but like to navigate, it's really just loving, like tender, like experiences. It's not a huge like algebra like problem.
Right.
It's really easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The hard part is like facing it.
Right. I'm definitely gonna have to edit this because my dog, like everyone, just got on my bed and is panting incessantly right next to the microphone. I have to remove her. A lovely piece about everyone being understanding about real life experiences and editing. Okay, get down. Into the other room. And I couldn't do that casually in a way that no one saw. Go away. Like that, I was like, how can I quiet her? It's not going to happen. I got to just remove her from the situation. Yeah. And I think people knowing there is a simple way to do this. You just have to set that intention. Like, this is important to me. I really want to thrive in my life, and this is how I'm going to make it happen. Knowing
Yes.
that, right? And hearing other people say, yeah, I've cleared a lot of stuff by the simple practice, but it's the dedication to it. It's that like discipline of, I'm going to do this every day because I know that there is something better on the other side of it, and just diving in,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That's almost like
Totally.
art sometimes.
Say that again. I didn't hear that part.
That's almost the hardest part sometimes. It
Yes.
just,
Yes. Totally.
yeah.
Totally.
I got when we were at Date with Destiny, I got someone was handing out those intention little necklaces. They have different words on them. And I
Mhm.
got a few from random people. And the last one that I got was discipline. And I was like, well, that was interesting. I was like, discipline. And my head went directly to like working out. Like like I couldn't associate it with anything else other than, yeah, when you're gonna get fit, you have to be disciplined. And then I was like, I don't know, like my mind didn't want to think discipline had anything to do with anything else.
Oh yeah. So for me, like all the clues were like in front of me for so long, and I was like, whew, that's, yeah, I got it on kind of surface level. And but like this year, more so than ever, I'm getting it. But once you start getting it, it's easier to see.
Yeah. So we have one question in the chat box. It says, what are good practices to do for self-love? Do you have anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, so for me, definitely carving out some time for me. So self-love, I used to think, oh, I'm gonna go to the nail salon. I'll go to like a workshop. Um, Eating healthier, like I cut out a lot of sugar, so that having a spiritual practice, going out in nature whenever you can. Let's see, cutting out like anything that's toxic that comes from the media, whether it's be social media, TV, um, anything that sort of causes chaos.
Mhm.
But really just giving yourself that time.
Yeah, it's almost like it goes back to, I think the word discipline is such a like a word, like it seems like hard
What
and like,
could we change that word? What other word? Because I get the whole discipline thing.
right? It's like,
What
how
is
would you,
it?
what was that?
What's another word for discipline that would work?
Something that feels better than that. Commitment, maybe. Uh,
Commitment. Yes, I like
feels,
that. Commitment. I
but it's,
commit
hmm.
instead of like discipline.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe that's probably my own thing. I'm like, discipline. No, nobody tells me what to do. But that
Exactly.
commitment to, I'm going to, the self-love piece is making those decisions and committing to saying, I am not going to treat myself or allow myself to be treated any way that I wouldn't allow someone that I really fully love. Like, what would you say to somebody that you really love that was asking you what to do in that scenario? You know what I mean? Whether it's your boundaries not being held up or whatever it looks like. It's sometimes people skip that part. They love everyone else. Is an interesting thing that had come to me when I was talking to somebody about, they were talking about the fact that they're always the giver in the relationship. They're always giving so much. And I was like, I kind of feel like that resonates with me a little bit too. I'm like, but what is that? And we kind of unwound it. And it was like, I feel like I was giving so much to overcompensate so I wouldn't receive almost, which seems ridiculous, but it was a worthiness to receive almost that I was dealing with. And so if I keep giving, they don't even have a chance to give back to me. And it went back to that self-love, right? It was like, no, I can be taken care of. I can be loved. Um, and it was an interesting thing that kind of spiraled back around of that. If I'm doing that for someone else, I should be equally as comfortable doing it for myself. And I wasn't. I was more than happy to give to everyone else. And then when it came time for me to receive, I was like, no, that's okay. That's okay. No, it's fine. Like, I don't know. It's totally fine. I don't need that. And it was like, oh, okay, but you do. So
Yeah, totally. It's not comfortable for a lot of us to receive it. It's easier, much easier to give.
Mhm. Yeah, so I think that I'll replace discipline with commitment because that feels better.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so those are some of the things that sort of pop up as self-love, but
Mhm.
giving yourself that time. Oh, there's so much conditioning and belief on the whole self-love. You're selfish, there's vanity. Like I grew up with like, my mom, I'm gonna do for everybody else, but not me. And, then you're selfish. So if that's a belief, which it was my belief, and I think a lot of people take a look at that as well, because that may be interfering with your ability to give yourself for you. Because and we all know this, like if we don't give ourselves self-love, it's harder to go out and it's like putting the oxygen mask on. Like we have to put it on first so we can take care of others, sort
Mhm.
of like that.
Yeah, and you could probably start the shadow work right there. What does it feel like to commit to, I'm going to go do this thing for myself, and telling everybody around you that wants from you, actually, I
Mhm.
have a scheduled in thing for myself. If you feel like you shouldn't be doing that or there's resistance to that, you could probably start your shadow work right
Yep.
there.
Yes, exactly.
Well, we've talked for an hour. Is there anything else that you feel like came up for you or that you want to say to feel complete before we end?
Um, Gosh, this was so good. We explored quite a bit in an hour. Nothing is bubbling up right now.
Perfect. So if
Yeah.
people want to work with you, where can they find you?
They can find me by my first and last name, and that will bring up my website, or they can find me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn.
Perfect. And then you do like coaching calls over the or virtual now, like everyone.
Yes, yes, I do.
Yay, perfect. Well, I had so much fun talking to you.
Oh, same here. Thank you for having me. It was an honor, and I really, really enjoyed it.
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you.